those of our colleagues joining us right now. We are going to wait a few more minutes before starting this session with officially with Gavin Creston, just to allow for a few more of our colleagues to join. My name is Jakob. I'm the project manager for Emerge Africa, and in the meantime, before we start the session, I would just like to inform you all that this session is being recorded and also currently streamed live on our YouTube channel. So for our live streaming, that means everything in voice will be relayed, and for our other recording, we also keep the text. If you just joined us, please introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're from and your maybe a little bit, few words about your interest in this topic. All right, I see we are approaching, we're 7 minutes past the hour, and I think we should slowly get ready to start. Before we do that, the format that we've chosen for this session is to, you're welcome to ask your questions in the chat also during the session, and then towards the end, Gavin will be taking questions, and I will be relying those in the chat. I will, throughout the session, just keep an eye on that, so you are welcome to type your thoughts and questions during the session. And perhaps we should bring our presenter on, and maybe I should just briefly introduce our presenter. Gavin Creston is a lecturer in drama at Rhodes University, and where he graduated from. Then he lectured a bit at UCT at the University of Cape Town before returning to Rhodes in 2018. In this session, we will be talking about applying theatrics and his experience in drama into what it means to do an online session, to kind of bring that to life. I'm quite sure that many of our colleagues currently with us have spent a lot of time in Zoom sessions and in teaching sessions as well. So I'm sure that Gavin will be telling more about like how to bring that to life and add a bit extra. Gavin, if you are ready, I
Yes.
welcome you to this session, and thank you so much for your willingness to present for Emerge Africa this afternoon. If you are ready, then you are welcome to start your session.
Thank you so very much. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to Emerge Africa. I just want to confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So we have opted to keep this session a verbal presentation, but I will, or rather, I have emailed Nicola the presentation, which does contain some links that I will refer to as we go through the session for you to engage with in your own time and to explore when you would like to. So I've titled this From Page to Stage or Screen, and I'm hoping to share some tips that maybe you can implement in some of your teaching that you may find helpful in this kind of current situation where we are working so remotely and almost as a cyborg in the way that we connect with our screen and our students. So I would like to start with a bit of an anecdote that speaks to the correct mindset, perhaps, in that a mindset that needs to be shifted, a mindset that needs to be provoked. So I was chatting to a colleague, and they were saying, I feel like I'm only engaging with my computer screen and not the students when I read my lecture notes. So I responded, you just read your notes. You just either read them to your students on Zoom or via a narrated PowerPoint presentation. Yes, he responds. Well, then of course, like you're only engaging with your screen and not your students, because you are only engaging with your screen. Do you normally just read your lecture notes in the lecture hall? Of course not, he responds. So why are you doing it now? I ask. Well, because it's not a real lecture. You know, this idea of a real lecture. Well, what would you normally do? And he responds, normally my notes are just supportive. I convey content through stories, anecdotes, case studies, interpretation. I know my content, and so the notes are reminders or springboard. Usually I just pace and I gesture, I lock eye contact with students, we laugh, I suppose. I'm more animated when I lecture. So I simply respond and I say, so why don't you do just that? And he responds, well, because it's not a real lecture. And so I think we really need to be quite honest with ourselves with regards to this kind of suspension of disbeliefs and the imaginary truth in terms of what is real and what is not real, yet at the same time grieve what was real and what is now real. And so I think the starting point is already in the back of your mind to consider that you are still lecturing, you are still teaching, you are still yourself, right? As much as we have been reduced to these pixels, these avatars, these barcodes, these login details, behind all of that, lack of a better term, artificial intelligence, there is flesh, there is personality, and there is desire there. And that can still transcend somewhat. But we do need to go about this, both physically and conceptually. And so this is where I draw from my work in theatre and performance as a theatre maker and a pedagogue within theatre. And so if one had to take a dramaturgical approach in which we situate ourselves within the friction of the composition of what we are doing, right? We situate ourselves within the action, within the character, within the space, within the time, within this new reality of this play or this world, in order to compose it. If we had to consider that approach, or something that I have learned, is that we really need to accept the situation, right? In that this is the parameter of the time-space continuum that we are existing in, and we need to accept the limitations as well as the possible extensions of what we are dealing with, whether that means high tech, low tech, fast, slow, we need to accept that situation. And I think that's a lot easier for us lecturers than perhaps higher management, right? A key in dramaturgy is once we accept the situations, we can make friends with the problem, right? And in making friends with the problem, not coming at it so antagonistically, as in this situation to be solved, but rather a problem that is taken on its own reality that needs to be supported, is we can adapt to the chronic nature of this situation. And it is chronic, right? Again, we need to accept the situation that it is chronic. It's not necessarily acute. And that leads on to kind of the fourth dramaturgical bit of advice, and that is to contain your subjunctive nostalgia. So we have to adapt to this chronic situation. We have to accept it. We have to make friends with it and contain our subjunctive nostalgia of, oh, remember how it was when we were in the classroom, when we were this, when we were doing that, in order to fail forwards and accept the fact that we're all scholars. And as theatre maker and as dramaturg, that is really how we world a new world, or make a new suspended reality in another reality, and that we accept this new reality and we make friends with it. We adapt to the fact that it's chronic. We contain our subjunctive nostalgia about how it was, imagining how, in order, because ultimately we want to fail forwards, taking into account we're all scholars. And so that's a conceptual basis that I suppose, advise my students as theatre makers, but also my colleagues in other departments who are having to perform a little bit extra, right? So that's somewhat of a conceptual basis. But in order to perform, or in order to compensate for that digital divide, we do need to take into account that behind that digital or that machinic assemblage of the screen, of the speaker, of the Wi-Fi, of the codes, of the Zoom, of the pixel, of the avatar, there is a human being behind there, right? And we need to prepare the body. And this is where we go into some old school acting and performance techniques. So we need to ensure that we have got a sharp and adequate physicality and voice. If your body is your instrument, you of course need a sharp tool. In the past session I did some live demonstrations. Sorry, I'm just seeing that there is a question. Yeah, I'm just taking note of the question. And we see, I'm just finding my place. So we need to prepare the body, we need to prepare the voice. And in the last session, I did actually show some techniques that we do. And I think this speaks to one of the questions about stress and resilience. In some techniques and some activities. I haven't, or I'm not doing that in this session, but I have linked some YouTube videos to the presentation that I will share. But it's very important that we ensure that we have got an activated breath and that we're not doing clavicular breathing, right? Clavicular breathing is when we kind of breathe into the top part of the lungs, around the shoulders, the clavicles, and that's fine when we're having a conversation with our friend or whatever. But now we do need to switch into performative mode, in which we need to source from our intercostal or diaphragmatic breathing. And basically that means kind of breathing from your tummy, so to speak, from your lower rib cage, from your diaphragm, and from those larger, more bulbous areas of the lungs. And we need to stretch that in order to breathe properly, in order to relax the nerves, but more specifically, to result in a metered, measured rhythm. We also need to activate our organs of articulation, so our tongues, our lips, etc., for clarity. You may feel that you are very tired after lecturing, and that is because the muscles in your body, i.e. your diaphragm, your throat, your jaw, your tongue, your lips, your palate, your nose, your sinuses, all those parts of your body have not been warmed up. And so you're going in there cold. And so of course they're going to get hoarse. Of course they're going to get tired. I say that as I have a sip of water, right? So we need to prepare the body, get some stamina up, some endurance, right? This is really important, not only to prepare the body for the resilience of the body, right? Because you wouldn't walk into gym and just start lifting the biggest weight. No, you have to consistently lift the lowest weight daily until you can move on to the next weight, the next weight, the next weight. Otherwise, you would hurt yourself. So we need to build up that muscle, that resilience, that discipline, that body memory. But it's also for clarity of communication, because the value of what you say is also largely equivalent to how you say it, right? So we need to ensure that we are communicating in a somewhat understandable, friendly manner. We also, right. Some other tips, if I'm going back to the idea of elevating one's content from the page to the stage/screen, is to really open the body and space out, and that we really need a spatial awareness. We've gone from lecture halls or classrooms into small offices, even bedrooms, cubicles. And we tend to, in these kind of corporatized environments or small spaces, operate in the perimeter. The desk is against the wall and the bookcase is against the wall, and everything's against the wall, as if we are exhibiting space, not functioning or occupying space. If I walk into a room and yeah, there's just furniture along all the walls, and then there's like a rug in the middle of the room. Pull everything away from the walls to actually give you space. Imagine yourself bigger than you are. Imagine this aura, this bubble expanding and growing from your center, right? So pull that desk away from the wall so that you're not, apologies, so that you're not confronting a wall that is blocking your energy, and pull your chair away from your desk so that you also don't feel so armored all the time. Imagine this kind of marshmallowy cloud enveloping you. Give yourself space so that you can occupy the space. Raise your screen, especially if you're on a laptop. We all tend to be looking down, and that is immediately putting so much tension on the back of your neck and your head, resulting in this tension headaches, going around the jaw. You need to lift your head, so lift your screen in order to relax those kind of dorsal muscles, your spinal muscles. Spine. The muscles running along your spine. Apologies for that. I also find, in order to take space and in order to not only connect with the screen and in order to prevent me from reading, I will put up some posters, just some recycled A3 paper on my wall where I'll write my key notes, bearing in mind that my desk and chair is in the middle of the room. And so I'm engaging with quite a large scope of space with these various notes and posters on my wall, so that I'm not just engaging with this head looking down, eyes only focusing on a camera, right? Take space, literally. Occupy the space if you can, as much as you can. Don't confine everything to the shoulder, elbow, keyboard, kind of circuit. Open up. I also work a lot with visualization. So if you can imagine the throat chakra, what I use to ensure or to maintain that I am taking space is to picture like a little sun beaming out of my throat, right? Your throat chakra, there is light. Picture that light emitting out of your throat. And so don't eclipse your light by looking down, by turning your head too much, by tensing your shoulders, right? Consider your composition and placement in the room and how that light emits from your throat. If you are teaching synchronously, and you are engaging with a camera, even if you are just recording, or perhaps even just for voice, try and spot above the camera. Don't necessarily look at the camera. Actors never look at the camera. We look above the camera. We never look at our duologue partner. We look above them. We don't look at the lights. We look above the lights. That's for technical reasons. We don't look at the audience. We look above the audience. So spot above the camera and engage that peripheral vision to take in the space. I also enjoy creating students. So perhaps it's because I'm a bit of a typical theatre teacher, but I have a lot of art in my environment. And so bearing in mind that my desk is pulled away from the wall, I often lecture at my artwork so that I can connect with that portrait and those eyes, and I can connect with that landscape, and I can connect with that couple and that photograph. Again, just to break that circuit of the screen, the keyboard, the elbows, the wrists, the eyes, to take space. And we used to do this all the time as a child. And certainly interning and tutoring and all of that, engage with the objects and the images and the pets, I have a cat, around you, and imagine your students, imagine your audience. I just want to take a 10-second breather just to gather some notes. Sorry, with regards to the questions, yes, this is a verbal presentation. I will share the slides and resources later. That was the advice I was given by Nicola. So yes, I will share that a bit later. Okay, so we wouldn't normally read a script necessarily if we are lecturing. So why are we reading a script if we are lecturing behind a computer? A lot of colleagues say to me they feel like they're reading, and then I find out that they are reading, and they're often reading on their computer screen. So not only are their eyes locked on the camera, but their eyes are also locked on the screen, reinforcing this kind of circuit, as opposed to kind of performing or playing to the objects or images or pets in your environment. So I really want to encourage you to get rid of your script, right? Because your notes force you to read. It's an unnecessary crutch that kind of like would spark a lack of confidence, and it's a mask that prevents a sense of ownership or investment. I find that my actors are still able to transmit data better without a script, even if they don't know their words perfectly, then they are able to transmit data than when they have their script and are reading their words perfectly. And that's because you can't really transmit when you're absorbing so much, right? So please get rid of that script. Engage with some key cards or some posters that you can springboard off, and be yourself, because you're not a character. So that means you stutter, you repeat yourself, you say the odd ums. That is okay. I think you can trust the silence and be unapologetic for your personality. If you're slow, if you're loud, if you're humorous, I don't think you necessarily have to contain yourself to the pixels of the screen. If it is your first time with students or colleagues or members of the meeting, etc., and this is where I have broken my own rule, I would insert a face video in your lecture presentation or start the session with a brief conversation in which people can see your face. And I apologize for not doing that. So again, I was asked to keep it verbal only. The reason being is that people connect and trust a face immediately, and they can start imagining or you can help them imagine the person or the flesh, right? The human being that is on the other side and that is actually transmitting this data, this information, right? If you are teaching live, I've also found it quite useful to choreograph the gaze, so to speak. So in terms of where I am looking and also where the students are looking in terms of pinning the video. It is incredibly exhausting to have those like 24 tiles in front of you, with everyone's faces looking at you. So I often just sometimes put on another background. I don't necessarily take into account, don't take into account, but I don't necessarily see those faces. When you're on stage, for instance, you cannot see the audience's faces because the lights are so bright in your face, in your eyes, but there's somewhat of a shape. And you know there's someone there, and I try to instill a similar idea here. I might just bring up one person on the screen and just kind of talk to that one person, and after 5 minutes, change that image to another person so that I don't have all of these faces in front of me all of the time, because your body and your brain doesn't handle discord and disconnection. So we naturally connect, we naturally plug in, we naturally fill in the gaps, the colors, the textures, the depths, the temperatures. We naturally fill in all of those things. And that's why we get so tired, because we are constantly doing so much unconscious, subconscious work. I think it can also be fun to play with virtual backgrounds. On Zoom, you can insert and play with virtual backgrounds. And you don't even need a green screen for it necessarily. So I will, depending on what I'm teaching, I will go onto Google Images and perhaps download an image of a black box theater or an amphitheater, or maybe just the lighting box, or maybe it's a lecture hall, just so that the students aren't always in my space, right? So that I can again suspend or create another reality that's somewhat separate from my reality. Because that's also a problem as to why we're so tired, and that we're not really separating where we work and where we play. You know, sometimes I feel like I have my colleagues in the kitchen with me, which is lovely to a point. So sometimes we do need that virtual scenography, again, to draw from theater in order to create another reality. So on Zoom, you can share your screen, which is lovely. And again, this depends on where you're situated and your bandwidth capability. So you can share your screen, which is one way to connect with students. Zoom also has a whiteboard option, or what I have found quite useful is kind of situating something behind my chair, like an easel, or even if it's a cupboard door or something, where I can put up some paper and have like a real whiteboard with me, so that the whiteboard that I'm engaging with, or the chalkboard, so to speak, isn't always a Zoom or a pixelated one, but is in fact a real one that I and the students can engage with, that we don't have to engage with an intermediary kind of pixelated avatar, so to speak. So I want to return back to the real, right? I think these are some very known and obvious things, but because they're obvious, we often glance over them and we take them for granted. And so we are real. Let's, jumpstart those psychological behaviors in action by getting fresh, clean, and dressed up for work, and not roll out of bed and half in the pajama, half in the dressing gown, because people can't see us, because they can't hear us properly, that we're not ready. So we need to jumpstart that. And please have a look at the YouTube links of some of the vocal warm-ups you can do to engage your voice and your throat and your organs of articulation and transmission in a way that won't exhaust your body, right? So we need to jumpstart that behavior and prepare our voice so that we can refine our instruments. At the beginning of the lockdown here in South Africa anyway, my schedule fell apart completely and everything was just emergency. And that was very difficult for someone like me who works at a university where everything is scheduled. And I'm very used to every Monday at 9 to this time I do that, and on a Tuesday and a Wednesday and from London, I know how it runs. So I now organize my lectures and I schedule in as if it is a live lecture, so that I kind of can refine my medium being time, right? So refine your medium, refine your schedule, dedicate those recording days, dedicate those live teaching days, dedicate those marking days, so that you can chart your energy and know if a week is a 5-day long race, on what days you need to exert the more energy, the more physical energy, the more vocal energy, the more cerebral energy, the more intellectual energy, the more reflective energy. How can we try and schedule those in a shrewd way? So we need to organize our time, because that's your medium, but we also need to organize our space, because that's our medium. So working in a cluttered space, as I said, isn't always conducive. Pull yourself away from the walls, give yourself space in order to occupy your space so that you can be bigger, so that you can engage with something more than just 30 centimeters away from yourself. Something that I find helps a lot, and this is a personal thing, is I still spray my cologne in the morning. So apart from the underarm, I still spray the actual perfume, the cologne, and I find that psychology of scent is very uplifting and also sets a particular tone for the day. Even though I know I'm only bonding with machinery, and a machine cannot smell me, it does trigger a certain psychological patterning in me. And if possible, work in a separate room, if possible. Let's take into account these thresholds, these borders and separation, for instance. Or if you can use your office, which does kind of force these behaviors. Although I must be honest, having been in my office recently, I have found it very strange, and a whole new recalibration will have to take place. Yes, so in closing, just want to recap that we kind of need to accept the situation in order to make friends with the problem so that we can adapt to the chronic nature, right? Contain the what ifs and remember when and when we. So, and rather look at the future about failing forwards. And we can do that by refining a mental shift. We can just put some new mental strategies in place and look at this notion of how do we create a new world, a new reality, a new teaching reality, maybe draw from the arts in terms of preparing the body, preparing the time, preparing the space, and employing some scenographic design aspects. And maybe if we do really pay attention to building the muscles around our organs of articulation, the placement of our head, the elongation of our spine, the ergonomics of how we're sitting, the gaze, the activity of the lungs and how we are breathing, perhaps if we start refining that and getting some healthy habits into place that we often take for granted, maybe the body won't be so tired, or maybe it will have a slightly higher level of endurance or patience, and then we can start setting some new rhythms and patterns so that we can sort of graph the physical, vocal, intellectual trajectory of the week. Thinking of yourself almost as an artist, where you have your recording day, then you have your fitness day, then you have your publicity day, then you have your kind of finances and recon day, almost like an artist would divide their practice up. How can we maybe do that with our teaching as well? Yes, so that brings me to about 30 minutes, well, just over 30 minutes. And I did say to Jakob that I prepared to talk for about 30 minutes and then opening up for other questions and conversations, not only with me, please, but with each other, because we're all scholars all the time, please. Maybe for 10 to 15 minutes as I kind of blocked off this as like a 45-50-minute session. So yes, I would like to hand back over, please.
Thank you so much, Gavin. It's a very interesting presentation, and I must admit, to be really honest, in a way, it's nice to be in a Zoom session where we all get to rest our eyes a little bit. Without videos. So I actually enjoyed that. I do have your slides though that I'm just quickly going to share. They very nicely summarize some of the points that you made. So I'm just quickly going to share those in the chat there, so our participant can go through them if they would like to, either now or after the session.
Okay, great.
We have a couple of questions, and I think we are not many participants in this room today, so that would allow us a bit of space for others to take the microphone and speak about their experiences. If we have some of our colleagues here who have spent very much time lecturing online, that may want to share their thoughts on doing that and getting to quite exhausting points, and especially relying on Tony's question where he asked about the thoughts of colleagues who have reached the limits of this near breaking point. Maybe perhaps, Gavin, if you have any, in your experience or from colleagues, and any of other colleagues have any experiences that they would like to share and reflect on with the rest of us.
So yeah, for me, I think it's been quite a multi-pronged approach in that I found how do I say this, a surprise in how policy can also protect me, right? And so I have found myself going back to my contract of employment and just checking what is considered right and fair and all of that. And again, trying to take a step back from the situation. Again, maybe like acting, but taking a step back from the character and saying, it's not necessarily me, it's the job, and how can I use policy to protect me in order to assert some boundaries, and making clear that they are boundaries and not barriers, and keeping things very clinical in those negotiations and not emotive. I find that so a lot of the tips that I said, such as ensuring good posture, robust organs of articulation, those sorts of exercises help in managing my headaches a lot because of the amount of muscles that are crisscrossing across the face and the neck and the spine and the scalp and the jaw. Because I find we're looking down a lot. I agree with Jacob's point in that sometimes we must have a non-visual presentation to give the eyes a rest. And breath for me is incredibly important. So a lot of breathing exercises to ensure, it's almost like I do an actor's warm-up, and I've shared those two links here. And so I think the file that Jakob shared is perhaps my old PowerPoint. So I'm going to share my new one as well, which also has links in there to some of these exercises, very simple exercises of how to build resistance in these muscles that we take for granted. And then I advise you to schedule in gardening into your diary. That's even if it's taking care of a pot plant, as a way to de-stress. But it's really difficult because I think we're all different. So I'd like to hear, I mean, those are the tips that I've drawn from and that I find work. And I'll those clips or those videos that I've shared. But I'd love to hear from other people. I have been practicing some mindfulness as well, but I do find myself getting a bit frustrated. I can't keep still long enough. Yes, I'm not sure what works for other folks.
Thank you, Gavin. But returning to some of the techniques that you are sharing, I'm just that's another question from Tony that he asked about the relationship between activating and centering. Tony's saying, I know some of the online facilitators that we use for Merge Africa. They usually take some time before an online session to calm down and center themselves. Then Tony asks, when do we activate and when do we center? Gavin, do you have any view on
that? Yes, I mean, I suppose it's a twofold question because it's like, I suppose, oh, it's another ask, right? So before even like doing the thing, like I've already prepped my lectures, got the PowerPoint, read the book, I mean, we all know lecture prep is major. And then I was like, oh, now you got to tell me that I've got to like exercise beforehand. And yeah, so I mean, it's been a bit different at Rhodes. When I was at UCT, I would actually warm up my voice and do my breathing, my intercostal diaphragmatic breathing, my humming, me, my, mo, ma, me, my, ma, all these various things that are in the videos. I would actually do that in traffic in order to do things at the same time. I do find myself sometimes doing that in the shower, sometimes not to be too graphic, but on the loo, because we don't have time. But ideally, if we can find just 20 minutes, half an hour in the morning to engage with some sort of yoga, Pilates, body activation, voice activation, because you can combine a lot of these things as well. Something, whether it's the Alexander technique and posture, or if it's mindfulness, or if it's even some spiritual practices, if you're that way inclined, meditation, just 20 minutes to kind of center the body. And then I find if you do it once in the morning, you can kind of just do quick little maintenance boosts, like just 5 minutes of humming before that big meeting in the afternoon, or just 2 minutes of tongue twisters before that feedback session, or something. So that's generally when, just before, and to try and keep it. It's to work with the right energy. Maybe if there's something I could plant in your mind when it comes to warming up the body, do not necessarily think of yourself exerting power on your muscles, but rather consider how you are placing your bones, if that makes any sense. Because sometimes we tend to go into things like full force, like, and then your warm-up actually exhausts you. That's not the point. The warm-up is supposed to be nice, gentle inwards, right? So we're not trying to exert power over our muscles, but rather consider how we move our bones, right? It's kind of that Tai Chi, relaxed, mindful, calm, metered way of engaging with that, because we do need to chart our activities. I know if I've got 2 classes in a day as well as a meeting in between, I'm going to behave in a certain way in those meetings as if I only had one meeting with a student, because I spent the whole day marking and reading. I'm now so excited to finally engage with a person, and that I'm going to chart my energies differently than if I'm engaging with people all day, every day. So perhaps consider that as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Gavin. I know there's a question from Annie. Sorry, I'm not sure if you had the advice and tips that you were looking for, but Annie's asking specific tips about building the articulation muscle.
Yes, so the articulation muscle, and again, it's something we look over. So that's our both our lips, our jaw, our tongue, and our soft palate. And at times, even our eyebrows, if one considers the structure of the face. And so I would start with a very relaxed facial massage. And in these videos, there are some examples and exercises. A nice facial massage in which you are releasing on a slight hum or a sigh, in which you're pulling down your jaw and you're really massaging into your jaw joint, and you're pulling it down to release that tension there, putting quite a bit of pressure in the jaw and the temples, pulling that jaw down, relaxing the jaw. I'm doing it as I speak now, so that's why it might sound strange. Pulling that jaw down so it's all relaxed. Playing with a few horse blows, the kind of the then moving on to what we call apple eating, where you picture yourself very dramatically eating a toffee apple for about 5 minutes, which then turns into a sour lemon. We then go into some tongue twisters and some tongue aerobics, because your tongue is one of the strongest muscles in your body. There's an incredible amount of power there. And it gets very fatigued, of course, if we are speaking. I think especially in South Africa, not South Africa, rather the whole of Africa, where we trans-language a lot. And so we're often shifting the gears of our articulation a lot as we are shifting language, right? So our organs of articulation gets tired, and our tongue gets tired. So and then tongue twisters, but they are in these videos that I have shared.
Thank you very much, Gavin. I'm just thinking.
Jacob, please. Am I able to share my presentation on the chat, or can one not do that? Or must I email it to you?
Kevin, I think it would be, I had in the background, I had the presentation from Nicola, but please, it sounds like there is an update to the presentation, so please email that link through to me, and I will share that. Hopefully I can share that before we end this session today.
Perfect.
And I'd also like to take the opportunity while I'm waiting for the link from Gavin to come through to me, to draw attention to a very small survey that we hope that you would like to fill out, those of you participating today. I'm just going to paste the link. It's 4 questions, basically just asking about your opinions about today's session, and also serving a bit of guidance for us in the future at Emerge Africa to look for things that we should include in our future sessions. There's a link right there, and I apologize for my 4-year-old in the background, but hopefully you can still hear me. And we still have some time left for this session.
I'm just attaching this. Sorry, I've got so many files on my computer. I'm just trying to find, oh, there it is. Okay, there's the updated one. Okay, I have I replied to the thread, Jacob, between Nicola, Irene, you, and I about this session, which has gone to your Gmail account.
All right, thank you, Kevin. I will look up for that. It hasn't come through yet, but it will probably be in a few seconds' time. And we still have a bit of time left in case some of our colleagues present would like to share your reflections about many months of being in online sessions and teaching, and generally your takeaways from this session.
So are you speaking to me or to everyone? Sorry.
I am speaking generally to all our colleagues present at this presentation here. The advantages when we're not too many is that it's possible for us to take the microphone and to say a few words, and you're also all welcome to share your reflections on this presentation and your sort of main takeaways from Gavin's presentation. And in the meantime, if I can just keep you all for another 2 minutes, I'm getting the link shortly from Gavin's presentation, Gavin's slides, where he's also linking to some of the videos and exercises that are very useful before starting session. So let me just quickly get that link.
Yeah, and if I could give you any advice, if you do YouTube your own, if you do find this very exciting and you do YouTube your own, I would advise, again, this is up to you. Okay, can I start this again? If you enjoy singing and are very good at singing, then you can ignore this advice, okay? But if you're enjoying some kind of vocal work and technique and technical work, and you want to YouTube and research some more on your own, just ensure that you are YouTubing exercises or tips or vocal training or vocal exercises for acting and public speaking, and not for singing, because it's quite a different thing. If, of course, you do sing and you enjoy singing and you're quite a robust singer and your throat is used to that and your body's used to that, then please play with all of those strategies and techniques and songs and your own musicality and warming up your voice. I'm not a singer at all. I wish I was. So I'm very mindful of the vocal training I do. So just ensure that you're not going to overstretch your voice for your training. If you're not a singer, and then engaging with singing training as opposed to acting or public speaking vocal training. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Gavin, and to the rest of you. I've just shared the links to Gavin's updated slides, where Gavin's also linking to lots of resources that are very useful when teaching in online sessions. We are 2 minutes past scheduled end time. I'm wondering if we have any of you that would like to share. Any of our participants would like to share anything in closing? I see that Audrey has left now. Thank you for participating. All right, Gavin, do you have any few words in before we end this session today?
Sure. Oh, it sounds so corny, but I think we as teachers, as researchers, as lecturers, as caregivers, we are also selfless, right? We all give so much, and I think to be selfish, a little bit selfish, can also be quite kind and selfless to ourselves. And by being selfish, I mean finding that 20 minutes, even those 10 minutes where you can just breathe, where you can just stretch, where you can just meditate, where you can just visualize. Yeah, I would really, where you can just tell everyone to just go away. You know, where you can just have 20 minutes to build your own world. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Gavin. And once again, thank you for presenting for us this afternoon. And to our participants, thank you for coming to this session. We hope to see you for more upcoming sessions with the Emerge Africa. We have quite a few lined up and even more in the pipeline. So please keep an eye on our website and feel free to join us. All our sessions are free and we welcome your participation. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you to our participants. With this, I would like to close today's session. We will put this out as a recording, as an edited recording on our YouTube channel. That will be in possibly maybe tomorrow. And when I say edited, it just means that we have sort of like nicely trimmed indent starts. And I'm just going to put our website in the chat, emergeafrica.net. Also notice we have the handle /YouTube. That's how you get to our YouTube channel as a shortcut. So those are the last words from me. Thank you all for participating. I'm hereby closing the session, and thank you all and wish you all a good afternoon.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks. Bye.